got a decent strategy. The full aggro strategy plus handlock, I suppose, and Ironbound Brute, Demon Hunter, which is not necessarily an aggro strat. It's a bold strategy, and it's one that could work out well for him, but he's going to have to get off to a good start as the Masters Tour begins with xBlyzes versus Glory.
First matchup, and it's a doozy. Glory, you got a quick look at his Priest deck list. He is playing the quad 0 drop, double Death Imp, double Murloc, Tiny Fin, alongside Disciplinarian Gangling, which has the potential to have these huge power spikes. Actually throws away the Death Imp, Murloc, Tiny Fin in the mulligan. You can keep it in some matchups, but a lot of times it's meant to be paired with the Disciplinary Gangling. But it does give you a ton of reload. It also allows you to get more things on the board for Traveling Merchant, empty your hand quicker for Voracious Reader. So there's a lot, but Blyze, full control of the board. Turn 2.
Yeah, look at this. Quest yet to be played. One of the first lessons you learn is that with this version, as opposed to the OTK combo DH, which was pretty much the only version of Quest Demon Hunter beforehand, you can delay your quest. You don't have to play it on one, because OTK Demon Hunter with Il'gynoth and all the lifesteal removal spells, you let your opponent develop the board. You didn't care, because you could always pull it back with your brutally powerful anti-aggro tools, whereas this just has Brute to get back later on. So you try and want to be a little bit more proactive in the early game. And then when you play your quest, complete a couple of activations, that is when you swing things around and actually get a stranglehold on the board.
Yeah, if you're not actually planning to complete the quest those turns, why play it, right? Especially, when you need to control the board early. This is a pretty good hand to get it done. Has the Tusk Piercer, Spectral Sight that's in outcast position as well. And Fury, honestly, in these types of matchups, is quite good because it allows for Blyze to keep the board under control until he starts going for the card draw, trying to dig for those brutes, and has at least 5 draws next turn. But the Cold Neophyte picked up.
I mean, what is this hand for Glory? We've been mainly focusing on xBlyzes game plan. He got the Void Touched Attendant, which is by far the best card in the deck. You always want to see it in every matchup. But from then on, he's been floating mana, playing the Traveling Merchant as a 3/4, something you never want to do, especially in this matchup, where they have very, very limited removal. Like, once you get it up to a 4/5, a 5/6 for sure, they just can't kill it. There's nothing in the deck that can do that. And so they have to then rely purely on their own proactive Brute game plan, which is fickle at best.
You say fickle. He's gonna have 3 brutes down next turn. You watch and wait.
Okay, it's fickle for everyone who isn't xBlyzes. He has the magic touch. I don't know how he does it, but every game he manages to hit the perfect brute hand.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. This is a lot of pressure. One thing is that xBlyzes ensured that the Cold Neophyte will not die, thus not be able to be raised headed to interrupt his turn once again. Glory can put a good amount of pressure on the board, but he's got to be a little bit worried. The Tusk Piercer is set up, ready to be swung, so at least a few card draws coming up. He knows that there's still a discounted card in hand as well. So, I mean, with Shadow Priest, though, there's not really much you can do to plan around it, despite playing more stats onto the board. That's pretty much what Shadow Priest does best. Wriggling Corner positioning was the biggest thing here for him, and does take the trade over just to try and protect an additional minion. All right, starts off with a Soul Fragment, hits a Philosophy. If he gets a Brute, he's cooking.
This is a brutey hand. This stinks of Brute right now with both the Spectral Sight, the Runner as well. Can even trade away. Can trade a couple times if he needs to. Now a 0 mana Philosophy as well. He just needs to hit the Brute. Brute me, dude!
Yeah. One more drop. Pretty sure it's free. Nope, didn't hit it. And when you're going for that aggressive of card draw, and you don't hit the Brute, it kind of sets you back, right? Because the Brute card draw resets each turn. So now he's got to start from scratch. You know, Tusk Pierce is not loaded up, so he can't pull the pedal out of his deck. He can hit draw with Illidari Studies, but if it's Glide, he's kind of just giving Glory additional resources.
Yeah,
hits Sigil again.
Like, gliding your opponent here is not bad because they drew 3 off of the the reader anyway, but he hits Skull, which if he can hit Brute off of this...
He nodded. Oh, there it is! Oh. And it's discounted from Skull.
Oh, he hit the runner as well.
Yeah, but he...
Oh, no, but it's Kurtrus! No!
Oh, he's 1 card draw off. He doesn't have a way to do it.
1 card off. Kurtrus, no! Why? Get out of here!
Why did I complete the quest so quickly?
He would literally be winning by miles if Kurtrus wasn't there. That is the worst quest completion I've ever seen. Disaster.
Yikes. Yeah, and I mean, that's not the greatest showing for the Brute DH just to start things off.
Yeah.
But you could just use your imagination on what the turn would have been like if Brute was the final card that he had picked up on the previous turn. Double Philosophy in hand. That would have been essentially game winning. I don't think there would have been any way for Glory to come back from that with 3 massive taunts hitting the board. So, and almost had it there. He had the nod, but I don't think he realized that his quest was completing, or he thought that the amount of cards that he had drawn that turn combined with the Skull discount would make the Brute cheap enough.
Right.
But unfortunately, 1 off from, you know, pretty much the ultimate swing turn in that situation, and Glory takes a 1-0 lead.
Yep, a nice way to start things off. The the Priest doing what it's supposed to do. Again, that's not really the matchup you want to hit as the Demon Hunter, and it's probably not going to get too much better. The Face Hunter is out of the way, apologies, which is probably a good ban from Blyze. To be honest, I was a little bit surprised to see the Hunter banned instead of the Priest, because a lot of matchups, like, you know, if you're playing Druid against Hunter, it's winnable. It's a bad matchup for sure, but you can get there. Druid against Priest, pack it up. It's just like one of the worst matchups in Hearthstone right now. It's absolutely disastrous. And so with the Priest out of the way, things start to get a little bit more winnable for xBlyzes, because against Handlock, yeah, you know, this is winnable as the Demon Hunter. I'd rather be on the side of the Handlock, to be honest, because I think when you're essentially both playing a matchup where you're just playing big dumb idiots for less mana than they should cost, Handlock does it a little bit quicker and a little bit more consistently. But obviously, if you hit the kind of hand that you would tweet out as the Demon Hunter, where you play 4 Brutes on turn 3, sometimes it can be, you're going to win that game.
Yeah. More often than not, right? And even if not, usually the Warlock is floating at, you know, relatively low health, you know, 20-ish. And so as long as if you realize you're not getting Brutes, you can go for super fast quest completion. Sometimes you can complete the big Kurtrus quest completion on 5, play it on 6. And then if you're not dead the next turn, you can kill on 7 with Lion's Frenzy, especially when you're looking at Warlock decks.
You can. Like, I will say that Lion's Frenzy is always less damage than you think it is. Like, it's rare that it gets up to 20 damage in a turn, right? You have to still have your fragments in the deck. You, of course, have to worry about having enough cards in your deck. Very often, unless you've hit early glides, it's difficult to actually have enough cards in your deck to actually, before you hit Fatigue, to get up to lethal. But yes, I do agree. If you are going to hit the win in this matchup, it is through a couple of Brutes and then a Lion's Frenzy to be able to close things out. Yeah, okay. Pretty good hand for Blyze.
Yeah, setting up for Spectral Sight and the possibility for Acrobatics on the following turn.
Yep.
Maybe even double Spectral Sight if, you know, say like a Tusk Piercer comes off the top, a card that, you know, can be dumped without actually drawing a card.
Yep.
Looks like a philosophy, so still going to be able to get the card draw. Lion's Frenzy, you don't generally want to draw this early. Actually, not even generally. You don't want to draw it early. You're almost never playing it because then, that gets rid of one of your win conditions in the later portions of the game, and you shut off the Tusk Piercers in your deck. So, pretty brutal.
Well, it's not brutal at all. That's the problem. You want this hand to be fully brutal. How much mileage do you think we can get out of that one this weekend, TJ?
A lot. I mean, that was
A lot.
That was completely accidental. I mean, imagine if I was doing it on purpose.
Well, already in this game, kind of an interesting choice actually by Glory. Like, going Tour Guide on 3 makes so much sense at first glance. Like, it fills out the mana perfectly. You go Quest, tap Tour Guide on 3. But with this hand, I find it a little dubious. Like, he would have been able to play the Goldshire Null anyway because he'd have 1 extra card in hand, so he could have gone tap Null for 2. And it weakens your Raised Dead pool quite a lot. Like, it makes his mana a lot more fluid here because he can go double Tour Guide, tap a whole bunch. But if this Raised Dead later on in the game, even if it's like 5 turns from now, if that's Raised Deading Tour Guides, that's a big hindrance in terms of the pressure that you need to put forward to win the matchup.
That's a good point. Good point. There's the Raised Dead there. I mean, you mentioned that sometimes it can be difficult to find lethal with Lion's Frenzy later in the game if the Warlock's floating at higher hero powers. I mean, is there any world where you just kind of play defensively up until that point, right? Is that something
As
that
the
exists?
Demon Hunter?
Yeah, just like hold Soul Rend and removal, and then try and deal with the Brute turn, and then
you
just
can
wait it out, plop a couple of Giants.
No, you absolutely can. Like, 3 mana Tamsin, not the Tamsin Quest reward, but 3 mana Tamsin plus Soul Rend is 10 damage AoE, and it deletes most of your deck, which gets you closer to the Baron Scavengers and Bloodshard Bristlebacks. Like, I never play a purely defensive plan in this matchup, but a defensive turn is definitely a cornerstone of the matchup that you always need to have in the back of your mind. Because you can just delete their entire win condition. If you delete all their brutes and you're knocked down low so that the Lion's Frenzy, again, can't kill you, the game ends. You've just won. Like, this looks mega favored for Glory at the moment, I've got to be honest. Unless another Glide comes down for Blyze, he's just under too much pressure. As soon as Glory is able to hit the Battlegrounds Battlemaster, it's just lethal.
Yeah, this is kind of rough. Glory has the opportunity to push through here if he wants. He can go Goldshire Null plus the touch, and that'll pretty cleanly clear off the Brute, and then push 8 more damage. Trying to see if there's anything else. I guess he could be more mana efficient and use the Drain Soul in this case.
Well, the other thing I'm looking at is
much of a difference.
Is Baron Scavenger, actually, because although you have to trade in your Giant and leave it at 2 health, it's behind a taunt. It's a pretty survivable Giant. Like, they can't really kill it.
They're not killing it.
Yeah, literally. They don't have any removal. There's no Immolation Aura, no Fellscream Blast, no I-Beam. They'd have to discover it off the Illidari Studies. And there it is! Again! Blyze, what is happening? You just won on rank 1 for hours this morning. All day he was winning. And now Insta-Brute Demon Hunter is down 0-2. It's just getting steamrolled.
Yep. Turns out it may have been a bait to bring after all. Tournament metagame's a whole different beast, right? And I normally in these situations I'd say, well, there's multiple, high tier Demon Hunter lists on ladder. You don't know what you're playing against, but it's not like Glory would change his game plan with any of his decks based on which one he was playing. He's just putting as much stats on the board as possible and then hitting him. And no matter what Demon Hunter you're playing, it's up to them to answer it. It's not up to you to try and figure out how many stats to put. So this is rough. And now, I mean, the only deck that it could possibly beat in Glory's lineup would be another Brute Demon Hunter.
Yeah, it's true. It's just going to come down to which Brute loses hardest.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see if he tables it, but I don't think that's in you know, the Blyze wheelhouse is to table a deck. If he's queuing, he's gonna keep queuing it. He's already hit the play button. He's already messaged the admin and said I'm ready before he even conceded the last game. So we'll see.
I guarantee you what's going through his head right now is, wow, I'm queuing into this Glory guy a lot. These ladder games are weird.
There goes my win rate for the day. Still at 1 though.
I'm rank Sword and Shield right now. Interesting.
Well, Blyze actually is going to switch it up. He's going to move over to the Celestial Druid. This deck, very interesting. It's, you know, you can consider it kind of an anti-combo deck, but it's also a combo deck itself. Celestial Alignment, and then coupled with Nourish to be able to accelerate your mana crystals faster than your opponent once you've reset every card and player to 1 mana crystal. And then the big one, Lady Anacondra, because you play 1 mana Lady Anacondra post Celestial Alignment. There's a lot of cards in your deck that you can play for free, right? Fungal Fortune's Nourish, your card draw spells or nature, the Solar Eclipse plus Sendarian Ward to make a big board, also nature. So a lot of big pop-off potential for the deck.
A lot of pop-off potential, but I will say that in my plummeting with Celestial Druid, like on the same day when Blyze did his legendary, I don't know, like 15 wins in a row or whatever with the Celestial Druid on rank 1, I was plummeting. I went from like rank 50 to rank 300 with the deck. I was just queuing terrible matchup after terrible matchup, and the Brute Demon Hunter was one of the decks that was punishing me most as the Celestial Druid, because everything you're laying out is absolutely true, and any Celestial Druid traditionally has done great against every version of Demon Hunter. This one, I think, is the difference maker. Like, Glide is such a brutal card in this matchup. Just as soon as when you're leading up to a Celestial Alignment, you feel like you've got the nutty hand, you can't lose, it just disappears. And then they play a Brute, you're miles behind, you don't have enough card draw to catch up, because the Druid doesn't have that much card draw in the list, to be perfectly honest. Like, you're looking at the Auctioneers, obviously, and the Malagos are huge. But if you don't hit them, you can be in a bit of a rough position. And so I think, once again, in my opinion, Glory's got himself just a good matchup.
Yeah, I mean, even if like alignment comes down before you can get Brutes online, it sets the base mana cost of every card to 1. So card text happens after. So the Brutes are free always, because you're always drawing at least 1 card on the turn. So post alignment, unless you have a massive follow-up, if there's like a single Philosophy in hand, it's just Philosophy, Brute, right? And then you have 1 mana, and you're looking at, you know, sometimes 20 plus damage worth of stats on the board that you have to worry about. So, yeah, I can see it. I can definitely see it. One of the things we do have to point out, though, Glory is running a little bit of a different list of the Brute Demon Hunter, at least that I've come to see as standard. He's running the double Royal Librarian, which, you know, obviously more trade cards in the deck is beneficial, because it's a 1 mana draw card. It has flexibility when you just need that 1 extra card draw to complete a quest on a turn to go for you know, a bigger power turn. But he does cut the Kayn Sun Fury to make that happen, which means that the Lion's Frenzy win condition versus any deck that has a taunt is nearly impossible, unless he can fit in the extra mana for silence, or it's not multiple taunt minions.
And I got to be honest, I'm kind of personally offended that he's playing double Royal Librarian and not Action Jackson. Like, you have to include the Auctioneer if you're playing all these tradable cards. It seems, in just respect to Blyze, if you're playing 4 tradable cards after he was playing the Auctioneer version all morning, I think you owe it to him to stick that in.
You do. It's just disrespect. Not really,
just
though,
rude.
But it would seem like it would make sense. It seems like a pretty cool inclusion in the deck. Specifically, like you mentioned, that he's running 4 tradable cards, 2, or I guess 1 of which is, you know, pretty much tutored out of your deck periodically throughout the game with Tusk Piercer and the Peddler interaction.
Oh, this is such a weird hand. Like, Glory knows everything you were just saying beforehand. Like, Philosophy is the nuts in this matchup. If they alignment you, or just, again, playing more brutes, it's how you win the matchup. But he needs to he needs to outcast his Spectral Sight. He has a Jailer in hand now, and 1-mana 2/4s. They're not bad. They might get him for a fair bit of chip damage. But he knows that this hand at the moment, it's not doing what you want it to do.
Yeah. I mean, do 2/4s just get there?
He just plays the 2/4s? Surely that was a quest completion on that turn. Like, you could just go Spectral Sight you just drew and then trade the Librarian. That seemed... I don't know. I want to find Glide, I think, in this matchup. A couple of 2/4s, they're okay, but it's not your win con.
He doesn't want it. He wants brutes. More soul fragments, more card draw, cheaper brutes. That's the plan.
Fair enough.
Now, Blythe's going with the Body of Cthulhu here. Double Innervate Celestial Alignment in hand, but I think he knows that if he just kind of passes turns and then waits till 5 to double Innervate out Celestial Alignment, he's leaving himself incredibly vulnerable.
Hey, I'm just glad that Royal Librarian wasn't played onto the board on this turn. I thought both players had just forgotten they're playing combo decks and we're just like, oh yeah, a couple of 1-mana 2/4s and a 5-mana 6/6 with Taunt. I'm winning this game.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's a 5-drop.
Now that is a 5-drop. All right, well, Glory completes the quest, and next turn could set up for a big sequence of draws. Actually is going to attack, using his life as a resource here is honestly pretty good. He's got Soul Fragments in the deck, and Celestial Druid, the way it works, or the Miracle Druid, it doesn't really kill you by whittling you down. It kills you by... they alignment you, and then they pop off and have a giant unkillable board.
Yeah.
Or if the game's slow enough, they Cthulhu you. So he's okay with taking some damage here.
And unfortunately, Gia will not be joining us casting this weekend, so I will not be able to get an on-the-fly translation for what Brute Me Dude is in Japanese. But I guarantee you that that is what is going through Glory's head right now. Oh, look at these. Come on, Brute me, please, one time.
Hey, yeah. Could still be Brute. That's not a Brute. Still has another Spectral Sight. Actually, drew the Chaos Strike as well. So.
Pleasure doing business.
Oh, also has. There it is.
There we go.
It's only one, though. It's only one.
It is only one. So Spectral Sight obviously can't get you the Philosophy on this turn because it wouldn't be playable. And Glory does need to consider how he's parceling out his card draw, because he does still really want to complete Kurtrus next turn. Because that is one of the most important parts of this matchup, is that if you play Kurtrus before they play Celestial, your deck costs 0. Your entire deck costs actually nothing. But he still goes for it, gets the second Brute.
He shook his head there because I think he was kind of thinking what you were thinking. He might have thought that he could actually complete the both parts of the quest in the same turn. He was one card draw away from actually getting Kurtrus in hand.
Oh, he clears?
That's sick, actually.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, he was planning this, it seemed, like for some time, right? He knew that brutes were a possibility as soon as he saw the aggressive card draw. And that's both natural brutes, right? Brutes are gone now. He didn't philosophy to copy them. That's just both brutes. So now the win condition for Glory is limited to Lion's Frenzy, and just best in shell is incredibly difficult.
It just deletes it, right? He's not even running Kane. Like, those turtles,
I mean, you can double Librarian them on one turn, and then Lion's Frenzy on the previous turn. And the point that you mentioned, the fact that he's already used so much of his card draw, he's limited on actual cards in his deck, which means that his Lion's Frenzy is going to be Not the best. He still has glides. He still has one Spirit Jailer left, I think, in order to shuffle more short fires. He's going minions.
My man's playing for board. I love it. Look at this. Absolutely illegal. But I mean, the question I have now for Blyze is, do you ever even play Celestial Alignment? You just play your cards, right? He's just winning. How does Lion's Frenzy ever get through Solar Cenarian? It just doesn't.
Well, he's still got the actual Kurtrus, right? That's a 7/7.
Yes, yeah.
So, and he can kill one of the best in shells here. The problem is that if Blyze is able to just find a safe turn, right? He could gain a ton of armor, which could then cut off the ability for Lion's Frenzy, even not attacking through taunts, to get there, because the damage is limited. I'm trying to think how Blyze sequences out this turn. I don't know if he feels comfortable enough to just play alignment next turn. He could like alignment Bloom Cenarian Ward. Oh no, you can't, because it's such. It actually.
Yeah. You can't do that.
Apologies. Yeah.
I mean, if this 7/7 is killed, Glory just doesn't have a win con. Like, he doesn't have enough cards in his deck to get Lion's Frenzy to the point where he wins.
Oh, there's Best in Shell.
Oh, is it really alignment and not just Best in Shell? Like, if you do that next, like, if you just go Best in Shell, Bloom, Solar Cenarian, I kind of think you just win.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm not sure.
You win this way anyway, right? They don't have anything in their deck. They have to deal 28 in one turn with Lion's Frenzy.
Okay, Glide. Blyze kind of liked his hand. That is not the best.
He's drawing. He really wants that Frenzy.
Yeah, but he doesn't have enough mana. Oh yeah, he does. Everything
he does.
costs he doesn't have enough mana for
everything.
glide.
Costs 0. As long as it wasn't in his hand when he glided, that resets the discount from Celestial Alignment. But the Lion's Frenzy will cost 0.
Yeah. So
and he can go Chaos Strike, Tusk Piercer. Obviously, then override the Tusk Piercer if you draw it. You don't care about that.
What was in the hand when he glided? It was acrobatics. It was
another glide. Yeah, that he's drawn already.
Yeah, another glide. It was double acrobatics, another glide.
Well, we can see on the thing it was Philosophy, Double Jump, Chaos Strike. Yeah, I mean, bunch of weird stuff.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Gets the mana crystals back. Draws with Malagos. Has 1 mana remaining.
He just has the nuts. Like, he drew into the perfect post alignment hand with both Ramp and Malagos. Look at this. The fact that the Lightning Bloom was shuffled back in and drawn means it costs 0 as well. That's insane.
And then Best in Shell. There it is. Get through this.
Oh. I'm seeing pull 8 turtles.
Yikes. All right.
That's just it, right? There's no win con.
Yeah, there's nothing, because he just doesn't have enough mana for... he would have enough mana, right?
He doesn't have enough cards. There aren't enough cards to juice up the Lion's Frenzy. Like, he can shuffle his deck back in, draw it again. I think, you know, even if there weren't taunts in play, like maybe with the attack from Kurtrus, but it just doesn't get there.
Even if there was a Cane, I don't even know if he'd be able to get there. So, nicely done by Blyze there. That was, I think, a good recognition. You know, the brute clear turn, utilizing Solar Eclipse and Lunar Eclipse together, which is not,
that was sick.
You know, the common use of it in order to get the double discount on the Destroy Cthulhu piece to clear off both. Very creative. So nicely done by Blyze, and I mean, he knew, you know, the alignment turn. He knew that there was pretty much no way he would die, just because of the limited amount of mana and limited amount of cards actually in the deck for Glory, and then just said, all right, taunts are good enough.
Is this just the greatest bait in Hearthstone history, that some of the best minds in Hearthstone convinced people that this is a playable deck? Like, it's 0-3 now. It's the only deck that's lost this series is the Brute DH. Man, I'm telling you, Fina has a lot of influence, and we have to stop listening to him. He will lead you down some dangerous paths.
I mean, maybe Bly's streaming Fel DH on, or the Brute DH on Rank 1 Legend for multiple nights in a row with an insane win rate was just an elaborate ruse from him to bait everybody else. But he forgot one crucial point. He was also baiting himself. But, you know, if you bring everybody else down with you, you know, bonus points, right? So, I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be funny if it comes down to Game 5, Brute DH versus Brute DH. Blyze still has to win with the Mage. But honestly, I actually don't think that's a terrible matchup for the Mage.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. If this carries on at the end of the tournament, at the end of day 2, we're going to be like, well, we've never had this before. Every player is 0-8. Nobody won a series because the Demon Hunter just kept losing. We don't know what to do.
They both ran out of cards and just kept tying in Game 5. And we had to keep replaying over and over, and at a certain point, we had to give them both a loss. All right,
man.
Well, we're going to get it out of the way in Game 4. I think it's confident to say, well, if Glory wins this, he just wins the series outright. But if Blyze wins this, he might just win the series. Let's see it.
Reverse sweeping the Demon Hunter after you win the mirror. Like, oh, this is the Hearthstone action I'm here for.
They will never catch me.
Okay, taking the draw before he goes quest. Again, probably smart to get the draw while you can from the runner, because you're never completing quest next turn anyway if you don't have a sigil in play, or very, very unlikely. So carrying on this way, drawing sigil off the top, I believe, for quest sigil on 2. This is more like it.
Yeah, the Fury's in hand, not doing anything at the moment. Sometimes if your opponent, you know, like on 5, plays like a single Brute, or, you know, something along those lines, you can use the Furies to clear it off. Mostly they're just in the list for, it can help remove key targets in the early game, and then 2, it gives you that additional reach because they're free in the late game to add attack to Lion's Frenzy.
They will never catch me.
Still no Brute sightings just yet.
Nothing as of yet, but not a bad hand at all for Glory, right? The Glide is a weird prospect because playing Sigil this turn and then potentially completing quest with Glide doesn't sound amazing, but if you play the Sigil here, I reckon you have a decent shot at completing the quest naturally next turn and then playing Glide the turn after.
Oh,
wow.
Well, doesn't play it, which means he's going to be gliding next turn, almost certainly.
Yeah, that's spicy.
Okay.
Pretty good all around. The card draw is not slowing down one iota for xBlyzes, so I think he should be able to quite happily get his quest completed probably in 2 turns' time. Stage 2 and then Stage 3 very happily.
Yeah, but Glory's kind of on the same pace, just, you know, 1 turn ahead of him. Yep, so can see the draw or the pickup from Illidari Studies and then make a decision from there, but it looks like he's still going to go for Glide.
Interesting.
Shuffle Soul Fragments in first as well, which means he wants to be drawing the additional cards this turn, which means he's probably eyeing some Brutes.
He could also glide his opponent here. It would obviously eat up all his mana and a Philosophy because the discount on the Philosophy wouldn't carry through. But he deems it worthy, wants to delete the card draw from his opponent's hand. And Blyze here, again, the eternal prayer of all players this weekend. Brute me, dude.
Doesn't hit it.
Ooh, a little light on card draw overall for Blyze. He's got the shuffle, but other than that, slowing down rather rapidly, not getting quest completion, it looks like.
No.
Whereas Glory has the absolute turbo nuts, double Spectral Sight in the outcast position. easy quest completion. He can almost play the Kurtrus on the same turn.
Yeah, double discounted as well.
Oh! Can he play Kurtrus on the same turn? If he goes Illidari Studies, draw, and double jump, he actually can, right?
And he could play the Brute alongside that as well.
I mean, I think he's
Oh, no,
going
he can't.
not play Kurtrus and just going for all the Brutes instead,
Yeah,
which is probably
going for
better. But the fact that was even possible is ludicrous.
Yeah, this is at least 3 Brutes. Or at least 2 Brutes, sorry. Potentially 3.
Oh, very.
Oh, no,
easy.
at least 3, because he can play the philosophy as well.
Exactly, yeah. He's just playing the
It's not
one
outcasted.
first, so- no, he can. He
Well,
plays the left
oh, yeah, he
one,
can.
and he outcasts it. Gets 2 8/9 Brutes. There we go.
Oh, there it is, the concede. What a silly matchup.
What a ludicrous series. Blyze has played that enough times to know that that one was over. But oh my goodness, what was that? 1 and 3 that Demon Hunter ended up after the first series of the day on Brute Demon Hunter, and Blyze, every game he lost was with his Demon Hunter, an absolute disaster.
Yep, that was not the best showing for it up first, and actually 1 and 4, right? Because Blyze lost
1 and
3
4,
times,
yeah.
and Glory lost once. So we're off to a blazing start in the opposite direction, but a blazing start nonetheless for Brute Demon Hunter. Overall, though, I think a pretty entertaining series.
Oh, yeah.
And we got to showcase some of the cooler decks, I think, that we have the potential of seeing more of throughout the rest of the weekend. I'm curious to see exactly how many Pro Demon Hunters we're going to be left with, once we get to the later rounds of Swiss and specifically the top 16.
It's going to be a tough one to answer. If I had to guess, I would say that Fell Demon Hunter will probably fare a little better just because, I mean, I do believe it's a slightly better deck, but it has a much more distinct purpose, more so than that. It's an incredibly potent anti-aggro deck, and if you are bringing a full anti-aggro lineup and you run into a bunch of aggro decks, it's not unheard of that you can just get all the wins there, and it has decent matchups against some of the combo decks as well if you're able to pilot the deck well. So while I anticipate that deck will do fairly well, this Brute Demon Hunter, I am very much yet to be persuaded.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the Fell Demon Hunter also has some weird combos, like with Fell Barrage that can deal significant amount of damage with like Talented Arcanist, and also just the ability to Il'gynoth at some point in the game if you're playing with some of the slower decks and you hit the right discounts. There's some pop-off potential there. So I think you're right, but that's just one series of sample size for Brute DH, and I'm sure there will be plenty more to come. So don't you worry about that. All you Irebound Brute fans out there. But that's the first match of Masters Tour Silvermoon in the book. Round 1 is still ongoing, so we're going to go to a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to have the continuation of Round 1 here at Masters Tour Silvermoon. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back, everyone, to Masters Tour Silvermoon. We are going to be bringing you some more action from round number 1 of the Swiss, as TJ and Derek did a great job of kicking off the day and watching a lot of Brute Demon Hunter die. I'm Raven, of course, and joining me for the first time today is Sottle. Are you excited after that first match, Sottle, for the rest of the Masters Tour meta?
I mean, I feel like it set the tone. Like, I have never seen a more collective delusion among the Hearthstone community than thinking that this deck was playable to be brought to a tournament. I was expecting it to do badly. I was never expecting in a million years that we would get that first series where it looks even it's not that bad, okay? It can win some games. It's not as bad as it looked in that first series, but I was expecting it to have a negative win rate. I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't get to come in with the hot take at the top of the show. The point has kind of already been made before I get to have the controversial opinion. But yeah, I was very surprised to see so many people, in my opinion, getting baited by Brute Demon Hunter. And I think we are going to see one more in this lineup now from reqvam, who recently did very well in a recent tournament, and really made a first appearance to a lot of the wider viewing audience. He's well known among sort of streamers, and he's hanging out in everyone's chats and so on, but you'll have queued into him in ladder if you play at High Legend as well, but never really had those big tournament performances. As we can see here, he has been putting in work, though. That's a very impressive record overall in Masters Tours, and as I mentioned, he's currently hanging out in Top Legend, as you would expect for a player of his quality, and that recent top 4 at Dalaran that I was referring to just a minute ago.
Yeah, and you can see as well how long he has been around, right? 9th Masters Tour appearance. He hasn't just picked it up recently, right? That's a good amount of Masters Tours under his belt, and a very, very good win rate overall at 58.5%. Very, very nice. And yes, he has been baited by the Brute. You can see the rest of his lineup is the Handlock, extremely popular, and arguably one of the best decks, if not the best deck at the moment. Face Hunter and Shadow Priest. So reqvam going for a bit of a mixed bag in terms of the lineup, I think, and I think that's something we are going to see throughout this Masters Tour. Even if you just scrolled through Twitter and looked at a few people's lineups, there is a lot going on. This isn't, I feel like, going to be the, okay, mirror lineup versus mirror lineup next game, okay, mirror lineup versus mirror lineup. This is going to continue to be a very wide-ranging class of builds going up against each other here. So we do get to see this deck, Sottle's favorite deck of all time, with the Eyebrow Brutes, of course, in there, and that philosophy for the key card. So pretty much pointing out the only thing you need to keep an eye on with this deck is, can the player draw Brutes?
That is pretty much the story, yeah. I was, talking about this deck when we were just sort of hanging out before we went live, and I said this deck kind of does two things. It makes one board of Brutes, however many you draw in your one pop-off turn, and then it deals 20-ish damage once. That's the two things it does, and if your deck can beat that, then you're probably going to win. If their deck draws badly, you're probably going to win. There is a lot of holes for me in this deck strategy, but it can, of course, create those incredibly powerful pop-off turns. We've all seen the screenshots. I posted one myself of 4 Brutes on turn 3 or 4. I can't even remember what it was. Of just when you do the thing, it can feel immensely powerful because it does have some of the highest power spikes of any deck in the game, and I think that's why it is potentially fairly easy to get baited by this deck, as again, in my opinion, I think some people have done this tournament.
And I think it's the perfect example, actually, of just a very narrow meta deck, right? Whether you like it or not, think it's good or not, it's built in the way it is because, like you said, there aren't that many decks that can deal with the two things it does. There are, 1 or 2 in situations knocking around, but there aren't that many. People aren't really playing the decks that would deal with it. Therefore, it can get wins, right? That's kind of how it works. The meta might evolve in a week's time and it becomes obviously the worst deck in the world because maybe players are going to be bringing some more of those cards that can help deal with this kind of shenanigans. But on the other side of this matchup, we do have DeadDraw. His just OTK Demon Hunter is going to be banned out, so a bit more of a level head on DeadDraw, I think, for this lineup. But now he's bringing the Celestial Druid, the Weapon Rogue, and the D6 Warlock, a big favorite of Sottle's, of course. But I just want to ask a few opinions on the Weapon Rogue because it's not really a deck that many players might be familiar with of recent times, at least.
We'll answer your question, Raven, but before we do that, we do have a little bit of extra business to take care of, because Masters Tour is one of the major events that's happening today. But we also have another pretty important event happening today, which is, of course, my illustrious friend Raven's birthday. And as you can see here, some key facts on Raven here is his 6th season of Grandmasters, a real veteran of the scene. He is an absolute connoisseur of the tomato sauce sarnie, ketchup connoisseur as we have here. And as he will remind you at a moment's notice, he is the UK's best gamer, officially crowned, has the title to match it. But of course, no matter how many birthdays he hits, he's never going to be older than Narinda.
Yeah, that is the best fact on that screen by far. And one that I think you could just copy paste across the board over whoever's birthday is on any day of any given week. Because that's going to be pretty good there. But yeah, thanks. I'm actually, I'm glad the picture's on this because I was blushing for a minute there. I don't really like this level of attention, which is weird because I sit on camera for a job. But yeah. Thanks, I appreciate it. I'm getting that year older, and I did mention earlier when we were talking, I was talking in, I think it was Fino's stream, and they were asking about it, and I was like, yeah, it hurts every time I cast Gabby and then realise I'm commentating over someone playing who's maybe less than half my age. We do start to have to look ourselves in the mirror and think, wow, we've turned into the old men. Just like, again, when Gabby called RDU a boomer.
Yeah, what I will say, Raven, is I think you're getting too old to be rocking that haircut, mate. Just
no, this is the TJ challenge. If I sit up straight, it's off the frame.
Okay.
This is for TJ, this one.
Fair enough. But moving back on to serious business, of course. DeadDraw, fellow UK compatriot, of course. And I feel like, you know, a little bit of the spotlight has shone away from DeadDraw recently, because in the early days of the Masters Tour, he was the flag bearer, right? He was the player that a lot of people were saying, hang on, this probably isn't designed right if DeadDraw isn't becoming a Grandmaster with the level of performance that he's put in. That has tailed off a little bit, I will say, very hesitantly, because you can see there still monstrous record in Masters Tours overall, 67%. And I think a lot of that, honestly, comes from a never say die attitude from DeadDraw. He's not one of those players that goes 0-2 drop, 0-3 drop. He plays it out to try and get as many wins as possible under the belt. And I guess we can loop all the way back around to where we diverted before, as we're now looking at that Poison Rogue. The question you asked me, I do listen to you, Raven, even when I'm setting up Mischief to make fun of you on your birthday. I think this is an interesting deck, and it's a deck I expected to see a good chunk of. It's a risk, but almost any deck in the current metagame is a risk because it's quite polarized like that at the moment. But for example, if you play Poison Rogue and you run into kind of quad aggro, 4 board-based decks, or 4 Rust Rot Viper decks, then you're going to start to get into real trouble. And I know Viper is a card that a lot of players have put a lot of stock into going into this tournament, this being one of those chief reasons among them. But against some of the other polarized matchups, you know, we've talked about this and we will continue to do so. The reason why a deck like Brute can exist, the reason why a deck like Poison Rogue can excel in a meta like this, is because we started at this point with everyone overreacting to D6 Warlock, that then everyone super overreacted in the other direction with decks like Shadow Priest that are just incredibly all-in built aggro decks. And then because there's these extremes on each side of the scale, you can find decks that prey on individual pockets like that within the tournament meta, which is why I think particularly Conquest is very hard to build for now, right? Because in Conquest, you very much have to think holistically, your 4 decks against their 4 decks, whereas in Last Hero Standing, you can prey on that polarized rock, paper, scissors dynamic a lot more effectively. So I think Conquest deck building right now is very, very tricky.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say even the pros had struggles, right, grasping what to do for this specific tournament as well in terms of lineup. We saw tweets up until, like, you know, the final minutes of actually submitting lineups to being like, yeah, I hope this is right. I think this might be good. You know, this kind of tweet where no one's like truly 100% confident. But let's dive straight into it, of course. This match from Swiss round 1, reqvam on the top on that Demon Hunter and DeadDraw on this Weapon Rogue. And I'll confess, Subtle, this is not a matchup I've ran into or seen played out too often, but it's one I'm pretty sure I've got a good handle on, because it's the one that's you know, kind of the same for all of these Demon Hunters, which is if reqvam can make a big board of brutes nice and early, he might win. If he can't, he might be dead.
Yeah, very true. He also does have that Rust Rot Viper in his opening hand here, which is a big X factor in the matchup as well. Obviously, there's currently no big weapon coming down from DeadDraw, but on reqvam's side, he will have very strong thoughts already about whether that card is ever worth cycling. Obviously, the goal of the deck is to get to brutes nice and early, and cycling the Viper will help you to do that. If you get 3 or 4 brutes down, it doesn't really matter how big their weapon gets on the other side. They're just not going to be able to race you down effectively unless they get like the perfect poison set up on it as well, with paralytic poison over 7 damage, so they can just spend 2 or 3 turns periodically chopping through the brutes while playing Cloak of Shadows to stay alive maybe, but I would expect to see it held on to as long as possible here to try and hit that weapon.
Yeah, and reqvam, although he does have that Viper, and as you mentioned, he could use that new mechanic tradable to cycle it, I think with that Spectral Sight, and now the Sigil available, and double jump, he probably has enough to at least see if a weapon comes down on curve, right? Because that's the easiest way to say, well, does it come down on curve? I can answer it. If it doesn't come down on curve, then reqvam can reassess where he is in terms of card draw, and decide whether he wants to spend that 1 mana and shuffle it away. Yeah, though we saw DeadDraw taking his time even with that dagger turn previously, and I think it really is just planning out potential card draws and also just how much damage he can push before he needs to use up the mana or break the dagger to equip a new weapon. Because it is very tricky in this deck although it can push out a ton of damage against a deck like Demon Hunter right now, or this deck from reqvam, you do need to maximize damage to give yourself the highest chance.
Okay, interesting. He does go with the far left Spectral Sight there, which I don't think was obvious. Like, generally, common wisdom will say use the one that you've just drawn because the one on the far left of your hand is going to stay outcast. But he had an opportunity there because that card was drawn on this turn. If he'd have played the left-hand Spectral Sight, he would have had 1 mana Acrobatics, 1 mana Spectral Sight in his hand, and had like really monstrous potential to potentially even hit another quest proc this turn, or of course hit a brute and then pop off with the Philosophy and everything else that he has in hand. But I think what he did does end up being the most responsible way of playing out the turn.
And now DeadDraw is at the point where he could just Secret Passage for a weapon. We've seen this play in previous iterations of Weapon Rogue. Once you get to that 4 mana, if your hand's not looking nice, just shuffle it all away, draw 4 more cards and hope for the best. And there's the Shank. And even though we can see it's going to run into Viper, like surely DeadDraw can't not equip this, right?
I mean, this is probably the whole reason he secret passaged in the
exactly
right, is to go looking for this, because the whole deck revolves around this, very similar in the way that the whole deck revolves around Brute on the other side for reqvam. So I think he'll be extremely lucky to get away with playing this. And even then, like, if you don't play the weapon here, you've essentially just vipered yourself.
It's done the job anyway, right?
Yeah, you just don't have a weapon. It's the same.
And I guess to an extent, if your opponent is going to play Viper for 3 mana, well, they're not going to draw a million cards, probably, and pop off with Brute. So although it's not what you want to see, it does mean reqvam does have to have a potentially slower turn now.
Double shot on Acrobatics here does hit. Now he can choose to play the Spectral Sight, and I like this, right? There's no rush. He doesn't have to break the weapon now. In fact, he can bait poisons onto it. He has enough health, he will feel like, to be able to do that. And then because he has such a good Acrobatics hand here, he discounts it with the left-hand Spectral Sight. Both of those 1 mana cards he drew go down to 0, and then he can just jam them down, draw 2 more cards here. And of course, he is looking for the Brute if he can find it. He is nearly halfway through his deck right now, so we'll be feeling slightly hard done by if he is not going to find one here. Fragment's just making it cheaper and cheaper. Nope.
Could still go again, right?
Yeah, looking with Illidari. It's an ugly draw, just picks up the I-Beam. We'll probably call it quits here unless he hits Sigil Runner. He does hit Sigil Runner, okay.
I just hope he's locked all this in. I imagine he has, but it's definitely tough when those turns just keep having more things to think about the longer the turn goes on, right? Now, quest done and dusted with Curtis in hand for reqvam. DeadDraw has to come up with something here, and it's still not looking great.
That's the problem, right? You know your opponent is running Viper. You know that there is a card in hand that's been there since the opening, the one on the far left now that is the Viper that just hasn't been played. But what other plan do you really have with this deck? That's the question. So Yeah, DeadDraw just does go all the way in, smashes with the Silverleaf Poison. He's just going to load up on as much damage as humanly possible, but he is going to need at least 22 more without the luxury of having this weapon available.
That was interesting, though. I actually half expected DeadDraw to load the poisons up so he could cutting class that turn and not go for the Garrote. I'm not sure whether I would have valued the card draw more than just chucking the Garrote in. Obviously,
reqvam wants to do with the rest of his mana. Yeah, I was going to say, obviously, Lion's Roar fills the mana the best. But I think you saw reqvam mousing over them there. He has these 2 Tusk Piercers on the right-hand side, which are now going to be very difficult to use to cycle with the Persistent Peddler from this point. Okay, that is definitely the best draw in DeadDraw's deck at this point by some distance.
Still has a poison as well to just beef that up a little bit. Still gets the cutting class off this turn. And suddenly, the game's back on. Secret Passage is a big deal too. If you can get into get Cloak of Shadows, if you can just get more poisons. Starting to stack up just a little bit here for DeadDraw.
Oh no, Brute. 11 cards left remaining for reqvam. Hasn't hit a single one. Has that 0 mana Philosophy locked up in hand, ready to go.
But just playing a 7/7.
Bad, is it?
Yeah.
Especially since the draw this turn was Acrobatics, which is usually 3 mana draw 4 in most reasonable circumstances. The only downside is potentially how many Soul Fragments he has in the deck, because if Acrobatics hits a Soul Fragment, that shuts down the Acrobatics effect, essentially. Because one of the cards that gets drawn is a Soul Fragment, and then that can't be played this turn. It is cast when drawn, but not played. So
It's just why I like the Curtis this turn and then just do the card draw the turn after, right? There seems like a lot more benefits. And if you drop the Curtis, then it means that if Cloak is in hand for DeadDraw, he probably has to play it this turn.
Yep. Oh, you always push the 1. Oh, classic Gallon gameplay here. Look at this. Swinging for 2 with a 1-attack Lion's Roar plus the hero power. That is not a Cloak of Shadows. But yeah, I agree with your point entirely. This is just clearly setting up lethal, right? So DeadDraw cannot just spend 7 mana on playing offensively here. He has to at least allocate 3 mana for that Cloak of Shadows on defense.
Ooh, can cycle the Extortion still. He wants to try and really dig for that Cloak, and I think he's going to have to, right? I'm not sure what the One Maker could give him that really saves the day right now.
Yeah, Wand Maker into Yoink, something like that. I don't know, doesn't really seem relevant in this position. Wants another Extortion now, I would imagine. Yeah. He is looking very dead.
And there is just 15 on board with the hero power, right? Unless I'm miscounting. He has to trade. Still though, with that line, how the odds on reqvam, yeah, I was going to say not being able to draw enough cards to make up the damage there was almost 0, I'm pretty confident to say, and that means he's going to win game number 1 with the Brute Demon Hunter, and it's a bit of a different story from the previous matchups, all.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, I'll hold that L for sure. Obviously, the whole intro of this series is talking about how bad that deck is, and then it won first try for reqvam, so good job. But I would largely suggest that that was due to a fairly poor draw over on DeadDraw's side. And I guess just a very good matchup overall, right? I think that isn't a terrible matchup for the deck, especially when you are running Viper, as most lists are. Because you just get so much time. You saw, like, reqvam won that game without even drawing a single Brute. The thing that we've been insisting the entire day so far is the one thing the deck does. So in the end, you know, DeadDraw just didn't draw enough damage from his own deck, and so reqvam had a fairly leisurely stroll towards victory there. And you saw the end, the scramble for the Cloak of Shadows, like, maybe could have got there, because you can see the deck is very vulnerable to just straight up face damage. The Brute Demon Hunter is, because he got him all the way down to 12 there while basically doing nothing the entire game because Demon Hunter doesn't really put any defenses up. But you have to imagine, even if the cloak came down, reqvam would have hit the Brutes at that point, right? Because there's such a small deck remaining. So then the big taunts would have come into play, and you'd imagine it would need to be a lot of Garots off the top for DeadDraw to even have a chance in that position. But we will move on. Demon Hunter is out of the series now for reqvam. He is going to move on to, of course, Raven's favourite deck, Face Hunter.
Yeah, and it's looking fairly standard as well. There is the Guardian Org Merchants inclusions there, which I think is the big difference as far as I can see. But outside of that, everything you expect to see is in the list. And again, it's just interesting, right? I've seen people already post that like, oh, I ran my aggro lineup into a sort of control lineup or anti-aggro lineup and just won anyway. Because I think overall, the aggro lineups are stronger than if you try and make a full control lineup. So it's just going to be interesting to see how these lineups do perform overall. And here's DeadDraw's answer, which is the Celestial Druid, which again, it's like it has the ability to pop off to gain tons of armor with Cenarion Ward, but I would say this is quite weak to Face Hunter as long as Face Hunter can get cooking in the early game.
It is, yeah. I think it has some game against Face Hunter. Primarily in the form of Best in Shell, right? You just need turtles and as many turtles as you can possibly get to be able to get out of this one, because generally even like Cenarion Ward, unless you hit the absolute nuts hand where you hit like Overgrowth and Bloom and Solar Cenarion, you're never really going to get to the point in the game where that can have a significant impact. And if you've let them build a board, 8 mana, 1/8 drop, gain 8 armor is actually just not that impressive most of the time. Whereas Best in Shell, if you can Solar that, if you can Bloom Solar that even on 6 mana, for example, that can be a huge problem for Hunter to deal with if you can get it down early enough.
I will say as well, that card third along there for DeadDraw is pretty good as well. Not a card we've seen in more recent Druids, which is just Feral Rage on a turn where a lot of the time you might not be doing anything anyway in that early game. Just having gain 8 armor or kill a threat such as a... Oh, I'm forgetting names of cards now because I'm an idiot. Not in this deck specifically, but like a Kolkar Pack Runner, like a Mancrick, just being able to kill it in one swing is a pretty big deal. We're not going to see the full mull though for DeadDraw. He wants max ramp to try and just outpace reqvam on this Hunter.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to what I was talking about before. Like, that hand was kind of the nuts in most matchups, right? Alignment Anaconda, you snap keep that in most matchups and just hope that you will get there. Feral Rage even just to give you a little bit of a security in the early game. But I think DeadDraw is kind of understanding what I was talking about. This isn't really a ramp alignment win the game kind of matchup. This is a play turtles and just win on board by 2/7 taunts kind of matchup, and I think that's largely what he was mulliganing for here. Having found no way to get to it though, he does just toss it away on the cycle.
This is like the sickest hand against anything else, right? Like, look at this. It's all the tools you need to just win the game in one turn. But of course, the problem here for DeadDraw is getting to that turn, and reqvam just chipping in that damage there again in this matchup. You're not expecting to make great use of a True Aim Crescent. It's not really going to come up too often, so I do like him pushing the bits of damage while he can so those hero powers can start to stack up.
So I think he does it now. Like, it's weird. I was talking about, like, he's mulliganing for turtles. I think that's what he's doing, and then he cycles the turtles away. But I think having them been dealt back basically the exact hand that he mulliganed away, he just said, well, okay, well, I have to play the Celestial hand now because that's what I've been given, right? And actually, this is a pretty freaking good Celestial hand, even against Face Hunter, because he gets there so quickly with Coin and Innovate, and then he has the actual nuts with Anaconda, Nourish, and Gedgesan Auctioneer. So he can Celestial next turn, and if he's alive, he probably wins the game.
Yeah, and I completely agree with this, because once Celestial comes down, it's not like, oh, well, Hunter's an aggro deck, so it's great that its cards cost 1, true, but also Hunter generally doesn't have tons of cards anyway, and also he's limited in mana. So you only have 1 mana. It's not like you still retain your old mana. So, like, DeadDraw with this hand, I completely agree. If he can just about hit the big turn, he will just win due to the likely volume of armor gain he'll get, whether that's through Cenarion Ward or Feral Rage, and it'll just be the size of the board as well. He just makes one big board, as you mentioned, as long as he's not exactly dead the following turn. That's just going to be game.
And this board does not look big enough from reqvam to really threaten DeadDraw. I think DeadDraw might be squeaking out with an unfavored victory. at this point, because he, I'm sure, will be looking to rip Celestial next turn with this hand, and there is not going to be enough damage in play to threaten that. Does the quick shot change anything? Didn't think so, right? Felmor's not attacking, it only came out of dormant this turn.
Yeah, it's 13.
Yep, let's go.
Yeah, this does set up lethal, right? For reqvam, from his side of things?
If he's not getting alignment.
Yes, yeah. If this is just the max to set up lethal, but yeah, this is the turn now, and suddenly, without being able to press that buffed hero power, that is a huge deal. And there's rage as well for DeadDraw.
Yeah, problem with Feral Rage is because it's not a nature spell, he will need to draw some Vates or Blooms to be able to fit it into the turn next turn. Actually, we'll start off with Anaconda, play Nourish for 0, and then be able to drop the Auctioneer and start blasting through everything else. But he needs a good draw here. Oh no! Okay, he just has to go. Yep, gonna play the Mali. It's actually awkward, right? Okay, fair enough. He's going to play the Mali first and look for Innovate or Lightning Bloom here, just to make sure he gets the Feral Rage in first and foremost. And then, yeah, exactly. Nature Studies, Innovate, Lightning Bloom, whatever else he needs to be able to play cards.
And suddenly, there was a problem for reqvam as he got so close, but I just don't think there's going to be a way to respond here, right?
Yeah, no Solars, no Cenarians yet, but of course now that he's managed to manipulate the position where the Auctioneer gets on board and he can play all these 0-mana spells, yeah, this is just go time now at this point.
I even think the fact that at worst he could have cast Best in Shell, right? And you'd like to feel pretty safe with that additional 8 armor.
There you go, there's the Cenarian. I'm sure he'll try and draw a few more cards here to look for the Solar before he starts jamming the Cenarians. He's just going to drop one now because he has the spare one.
Body of Cthulhu, it's already over.
And GG, yep. Welcome to Hearthstone.
That's such a big deal as well, because as DeadDraw, I cannot imagine he was going into this matchup feeling confident. I think this was a feeling of, okay, Druid versus Hunter, probably going to continue this series at a 2-0 down, right? But this is such a big win, getting Druid over the line, beating Hunter, evening up the series, and now it's all to play for. It's a big win.
And it was such a weird pan out as well, because he threw away Anaconda Celestial, right? Which I kind of agree with, right? But he was the reason you do that is that, well, unless I hit exactly Auctioneer and Nourish in my next 2 or 3 cards, plus Innovate, Bloom, Overgrowth, whatever I need to get to the Celestial alignment quickly in the first place, that's never going to be fast enough. I'm just going to take way too much damage. So he threw that hand away and then got that exact same hand back again, but with the Auctioneer and the Nourish, so that he just had the absolute nuts at that point. He was like, well, okay then, I guess we will play alignment.
Yeah, and the big deal there was that wild growth to be able to get him there, right? Because as you can see, if he didn't do it on the exact turn he did, he would be dead, right? That's just the way it is. He would have been the Hunter being too fast, as is often the case. But yeah, really big win there for DeadDraw.
And on top of that, even then, the Mali draw off the top was the absolute nuts, because he needed something off the top to at least a 0-mana nature spell to get going with, right? Because otherwise, he would play Anaconda, he'd Nourish for 2 mana, he'd play the Auctioneer, and then he's already kind of in trouble, hoping that the rest of his deck is the sequence of draws that he gets is very specific to be able to keep popping off. If you hit another non-nature spell, if you hit a Cthulhu piece at that point, then you start to get in trouble in terms of being able to spend your mana. But the way he then engineered it with the Mali, he drew 8 or 9 spells. You're going to hit Nature Studies, you're going to hit Innovate, you're going to hit Lightning Bloom, some way to just make sure you get that Auctioneer down on board and can fully pop off.
And here we're going to see reqvam's next Q, which is going to be the Handlock, and arguably the most popular deck on the ladder at the moment, or at least over the past week or so, and arguably one of the best. It does have that Rust Drop Viper in there as well, a tech I think we'll see quite a lot over the course of this weekend, but outside of that feels relatively standard, and not going to be choosing to play those Spice Bread Bakers, right, which we've seen some players kind of flirt with based on what matchups they're expecting.
Yeah, I think the go-to tech cards for most people for this Masters Tour have been Viper and Neophyte, right? And I think that is spot on in terms of what the meta is doing. There are really not that many minion-based decks hanging around in the metagame. Like, even if you look at the outright aggro decks, like Shadow Priest, sure, is an incredibly minion-based deck, right? 28 minions and 2 Raised Deads in the newer build with Disciplinarian Gandling. But like Face Hunter, for example, is not a particularly minion-based deck. They play a ton of spells in there, so even in some of those matchups, Cult Neophyte can actually have a significant impact. So I think Cult Neophyte is a massive card in the metagame right now. Key against combo and doesn't even whiff that hard in a lot of the other matchups. And then, as you were saying, Rust Drop Viper has just come in a reaction that would look a little bit stranger to just your average ladder player, but when you start digging into what the tournament meta will look like, you start to think about, as we're seeing here from DeadDraw, these weapon rogues that are coming out on the other side.
And we are going to see that weapon rogue go up against this Warlock, and again, this is one where the rogue, especially with an opening such as this, right, the Swine-Tusk Shank already available, I think DeadDraw has a good chance here at going just too fast, because again, with this handlock, you are generally looking at just tapping, drawing cards for the first, 4 turns of the game? It's a reasonable number to throw out there, and in 4 turns, a lot can happen against the weapon rogue.
It certainly can. And a lot may happen with this particular hand that DeadDraw has, because that is a lot of damage coming through very quickly. Already, Swine-Tusk Shank and Silverleaf Poison in hand with a Garrote as well, which means he can start digging through super fast to get to those bleeds.
It's going to be interesting now as well. He's going to go for the Shank, okay. I did wonder whether he ever wanted to just go self-sharpening sword, but that is a much better worst-case scenario backup plan if he faces the Viper on 3, right? Or later in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think you live the dream first, right? And just say that you get to get a bunch of damage out of the Swine-Tusk Shank. It's interesting, though. I think we're starting to see more self-sharpening swords being played. It's very common in the previous meta that we saw a third one being played just as a redundancy weapon. But there's quite a few lists I've seen now that are playing 2 self-sharpening swords, which again goes back to speak to what I was talking about before, is that not many decks have a well-rounded game plan where they can actually resist the 30 or so damage that will come from your self-sharpening sword by healing for a significant amount, right? On top of all your Wicked Stabs and Sinister Strikes. So if you actually break down the matchups right now and think, okay, how many of these decks could I realistically kill with, quote, just a self-sharpening sword? It's most of them. So I think
it's quite a lot.
So I think a lot of people now are choosing to run 2 self-sharpening for that very reason, because, you know, it makes so many other draws in your deck better just to have a weapon online, right? That I'm a little surprised to be seeing DeadDraw here just going kind of with the classic build of only a single one.
It does just add on as well the speed of the game right now, like how many turns the average game lasts, even in some of the slower decks, right? Like, you need to draw a weapon. You can't just wait till the bottom 5, right? So you do increase your chances that much more. We are going to see Antharian down from reqvam, so he has managed to get away with this just a little bit and putting down a threat, because without that, if it was just a null going down, I think DeadDraw would feel extremely comfortable dealing with it and kind of moving on with the game plan, or just ignoring it and moving on with the game plan more realistically.
Yeah, and I think honestly that's still kind of the good news for DeadDraw, is that because of the Battlemaster nerf, he doesn't really have to worry too much. Like, it's an 8/6, right. Sure, that's irritating, but if he can't find a way to kill it that he particularly likes, it's not the end of the world, because he can't be super punished for it just yet.
You can see already, right? Look at this 2-turn. He can swing now. Let's just say he wants to Sinister Strike. Next turn, he has swing again with a Wicked Stab. So he's getting awfully close to just beating that Battlemaster clock easily anyway.
Thinking of killing the 8/6 with the Prize Plunderer, though, I think, and the Weapon Swing. Yeah, looks like what he is going to go for. Does draw Cloak. I think if he'd have had that in his hand and not picked that up off the weapon, that very much would have changed his mind on that turn. But I do respect the trade with what information he had access to, because it's not a secure 2-turn lethal from that point, let's say. And if that's the case, then obviously if you don't kill the 8/6 this turn, next turn you absolutely do have to start worrying about Battlemaster and just the threat of lethal being on board, right? If just a second threat came down that turn alongside the 8/6 on the other side. So, makes sense. DeadDraw
Yeah,
still feels like he has some time here.
I think the drawback for me was just I just had Raise Dead lodged in my mind of like if you trade into it, take the damage, Raise Dead comes out, it gets played for 1 plus something else. You're like, oh no, I'm just in a worse spot with less health. Yeah, Cloak, big deal. No real way Warlock can interact with Cloak unless it's in a post-Tamsin world, or the odd occasion where the 3 damage from the quest wins you the game, sure, but it's pretty niche. reqvam going to continue to tap to get this null that bit cheaper, allows him to whip in a quick Mortal Coil as well. I did wonder whether he's considering just Cult Neophyte this turn, just to try and slow DeadDraw down again while he builds up this board.
I kind of like this, though, because I thought the same thing, but then even though reqvam here doesn't have Battlemaster in his hand, he's representing Battlemaster
threatens
lethal,
it.
right? Which is a very big deal, because it might force more removal from DeadDraw, it might force a more defensive turn, or it might force Cloak #1, all of which are kind of wins for reqvam in this position. So I definitely like being as aggressive as possible against Weapon Rogue when you think you can afford to do so. And counterintuitively with this deck, as always, you do have to continue drawing cards, which continues to deal damage to yourself as well, because getting hold of Tamsin, regular Tamsin, the 1/3, is of course huge because of the amount of healing that it represents. And then obviously getting Bristlebacks and Scavengers online is a massive deal as well.
I'm choosing to believe this was an extremely calculated turn here from DeadDraw based on what was left in his deck, because him just not being able to Cloak here is terrifying to me, at least. We can see, of course, that as you mentioned, there isn't the Battlemaster, could still be drawn off the top, but he does get Plunderer to help him out quite a lot this turn. It's a big deal.
And that is a huge stack of damage being pushed here as well. And I think what this also does is play around Neophyte to an extent, right? By doing a bunch of spellbait stuff that turn. So now even if Neophyte comes down, he still has, for example, Wicked Stab, Sinister Strike from his original hand, or Wicked Stab now from his original hand, and that he can still play under Neophyte conditions. Whereas theoretically, that turn for DeadDraw might have involved too many spells if he'd have done it the other way around. So I kind of like him going for the 2-turn lethal setup aggressively here. And as you can see, reqvam doesn't really have a lot he can do about it, even though the Viper has come down here to deny the big swing from the weapon.
Yeah, this is the problem, right? reqvam now has to make a decision. Does he want to heal with Drain Soul, or does he want to play Cult Neophyte? Because he can't do both.
And he's dead in either world as well, as we can see, because if Neophyte doesn't come down, Wicked Stab, Sinister Strike is available. If Neophyte does come down, reqvam would only need, DeadDraw would only need to take 8 in this position. You can see it. reqvam's going to go up to 11 with the Drain Soul play, picks up that extra bit of healing off the quest proc as well. Puts up a monstrous board with Flesh Giants, but it's just not going to be enough here. DeadDraw sees the lethal, of course, nice and easy. Just toss all the burn spells at your opponent's face. Yeah,
it was a good effort from reqvam, and they're the kind of boards you want to make as the Warlock, but the damage had already been done, especially because DeadDraw hadn't even had to play a Cloak that game, right? So even if a Cloak comes down there, reqvam's delayed once more, and you can see the matchup very, very difficult. And the big factor that I could see really as well is that reqvam didn't get to that 10 card or less point, so he could drop, say, 2 Baron Scavengers, can drop down the Bristleback to heal, and then work towards Tamsin, or just honestly, those taunts would probably be a reasonable stepping stone to work off to win the game, and he just didn't quite get there. I think he was on like 12 or 11 cards on that last turn.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes from, I'm not sure if reqvam even ever drew the card, I don't think he did, but one of the best cards in your deck, obviously, for getting down to that point is Backfire. And Backfire is a terrifying card to cast in this matchup, because you generally spend a whole turn just dealing damage to yourself and doing nothing else if you play it in the early game, which is not ideal in this kind of matchup. The other big tool to get yourself down is Soul Rend, which you use to, against other aggro decks, you use to blow up their board, and then once you've blown up their board, hey, ideal, because now I'm down at 10 cards and I can start playing my big power threats that lock out the game. Against Face Hunter, for example, like Kolkar comes down in the early game, you just wait and let them fill up their entire board and then just burn half your deck and the game's over. But in that matchup, it's an extremely aggressive deck, but it's not minion-based, so there aren't those minions there for Soul Rend to interact with, which means Handlock getting down to 10 cards in their deck is actually super difficult in that matchup.
Yeah, it was a very tough one. I think you saw just a good display there of what the Rogue can achieve, at least in this meta for the Masters Tour. But we are going to be moving on to a different Warlock here. It's going to be the D6 Warlock. And are you surprised, or is this the expected amount of D6 Warlock you thought of in this Masters Tour? Do you think it was all going to be handlock, or do you still think D6 has what it takes to do well in this wide field?
I expected a split, for sure. I do think D6 has fallen off. I think, even at the top level, the win rate of D6 has started to normalize closer to what it is at a casual level as well, where, let's be very clear, D6 Warlock does not win very much at a casual level. Even if you think that you lose on turn 5 to every game against D6 Warlock, the data does not support that. The deck is bad at most levels of the game. Top level, though, there were lots of players putting in high win rates, but I think the meta adapted around it. As I keep talking about with, how polarized a lot of the decks were, the meta has warped so quickly in various different directions. And then so with the new builds of Demon Hunter coming along, with Celestial Druid coming along, Weapon Rogues as well, coming into this to be able to prey on them. There's so many matchups now that D6 really struggles in that I thought only really the true believers in D6 Warlock would end up bringing it to this tournament. I think that's kind of where we've ended up.
Right. It's definitely a deck that everyone appreciates the power, but only a select few really appreciate the deck itself and just piloting it to the max. And we are going to see very early coin Runed Mithril Rod from DeadDraw here. Does have free admission, does have Hand of Gul'dan. At least to my eyes, so this is lining up to be a bit of a pop-off setup.
And when you are a true believer of D6 Warlock, this is how the game treats you, Ray. You ask and you shall receive. Darkglare Stealer picked up now. Not quite the nuts outcome, because he did, of course, have Hand of Gul'dan in hand. But he does have that nice benefit of having the weapon equipped, which means he gets unnerfed Darkglare, essentially. He gets to play a free admission Darkglare for 0 mana, which I think the nerf was very specifically engineered to stop exactly that interaction.
Right.
Stop it being 0 when it came off free admission. So the fact that you can get it back there with the weapon is a huge, huge deal, of course.
On the other side of the board, reqvam, of course, doing whatever he can do. Put big minions on the board, hope you don't get killed. But come on, cue the saxophone music, because here we go.
Imagine not playing this deck, Craven.
I don't have to imagine, Sol. I don't play this deck all the time.
Like, what if your opponent just played 4 brutes this turn? Big deal, they die! I suppose not technically possible. The pop-off is so outrageously early that there's no way for DeadDraw to get up to the 5 mana to be able to play Tamsin and actually kill his opponent this turn. So what he'll be looking for is a hand that ends with Tamsin in hand with some kind of secure pop-off for the next turn as well, right? So either a Blood Mana Stealer of Souls in his hand, or just some way to continue drawing a lot more cards or deal a lot more damage to yourself just locked up in hand.
Most importantly as well, he can bat aside this Anetheron like there's no tomorrow, right? It just doesn't, it's not even a remote threat. And now, without Soul Rend as well for reqvam, at least in his hand for now.
Did he Mosher his Stealer of Souls instead of the Nightshade Mage?
Wait, yes. Okay, that was weird.
Gonna call that one an oopsie, but otherwise
He got the Tamsin in hand, Sol. Give him a break.
yeah, otherwise he's looking pretty good. Okay, perfect. He found the Blood Mana Stealer of Souls, so he's absolutely in business next turn.
reqvam, I can imagine, just sat there staring at animations, waiting to do his own turn. But again, this is a nightmare. Without Soul Rend, I don't think here he can actually clear, right?
It doesn't matter whether he can clear it or not. Look at the hand, right? Like, it's just absolutely monstrous.
I guess I mean from his point of view, he wants to at least try and kill the Stealer, right? Just to say, well, if DeadDraw's second Stealer is bottom card, maybe that's enough. But yeah, this is we can see. Oh, it's a spicy one. The insta Tamsin. I think DeadDraw's done this before.
I think he has indeed, yeah. Stealer of Souls comes down, he has a Mortal Coil to be able to continue to cycle here. He doesn't need it. He has plenty of damage stacked up, and reqvam says, yeah, alright, that's enough. You've shown it to me, that's fine, I believe you. Back to sleep indeed.
Yeah, pretty rough game number 1 there, but DeadDraw is going to reverse his fortunes from that first game and sweep and take the victory there. Really strong lineup, at least on the surface, but I do think DeadDraw got away with something there with the Druid versus Hunter matchup. I think that was really where the matchup pivoted massively in his favor from that point.
Yeah, completely. And again, it was such an unexpected way for it to have happened.
Yeah.
He almost deliberately diverted away from the strategy that ended up winning him the game in the long run. So, kind of interesting. Oh, is that what happened? I think the Voidwalkers moved his minion, right? So he ended up pointing it at the wrong one. I think that's probably why it ended up happening. But yeah, then the Druid matchup, unbelievable. Just drew the absolute nuts. And honestly, like, if we're being entirely 100 about what happened this series, is in at least 2 of his wins, this D6 draw and the Druid draw, DeadDraw just drew the absolute nuts, and he won 2 games because of it, right? Like, there's not really much more to be said apart from that. He just had the absolute unbeatable openings with 2 combo decks that pay off those unbeatable openings.
It was one of those things where we talk about in card games where there's 30 cards you have to put in your Hearthstone deck, but almost all decks you would rather play 15, you'd rather play 10, you know, so you could just have the almost like super consistency in that early game to make the deck do exactly what you want, and that's close to what DeadDraw managed to do. He just drew the exact nuts in those games. We are going to be covering more matches for you guys, though. I'm just going to triple check which match it is for you guys. 1 second. Oh, there we go. It's CaelesLuna versus Nay, and it's going to be CaelesLuna up 2-1. So we are going to jump straight into game number 4.
Very good. Looking forward to this one. CaelesLuna, I've got to admit, I was a little bit jealous to see him repping the Americas region, because he's a player that I missed out on casting during the Masters Tour, where he had his big run that qualified. Then obviously I don't get to cast him in the Americas region as well, and he just looks like such an engaging personality to commentate on, and is a very good player as well. So really looking forward to having the opportunity to cast him a little bit. But for Nay, of course, long-standing personality around the scene, very well-established tournament player as well as caster and content creator. Many strings to her bow in this one. She really does do it all within Hearthstone. So I think this should be a pretty stellar matchup, and I know. I think CaelesLuna in a Twitter thread that I was talking about with Bloodyface, maybe debating some matchups with Quest Shaman and Fell Demon Hunter. CaelesLuna just came in and said that he was a Quest Shaman god, so I'm looking forward to this one.
Let's see. That Perpetual Flame's going to be drawn. Is the way I view any gods of Quest Shaman right now. How often can you draw Flame and maybe a decent charge call here and there? But yeah, this is one of the, I'll be completely honest, the weirdest decks from this expansion that I never saw coming in how it's built, right? Like, when you look at the Quest Shaman, at least when it was announced, it's like, okay, double spell effects, that's insane. Feels like either a control deck, because of the sheer value you can get, or a hyper aggro deck. And it's almost like not either at this point. It's just a weird, unique deck in itself where you can be hyper aggressive, you can play super control, but that's because of the card generation that Shaman has access to, and also, of course, the sheer power of that charge call. And we are going to see, oh, here we go, a mirror match. So what do Derek and Gia call this? Is this the Kaiju matchup?
Yes, yeah, big Kaiju battles indeed. Yeah, on Hot Takes, I referred to Quest Shaman as the extreme middle ground, which was something that when it came out of my mouth, my brain was like, that's nonsense, Simon. What are you talking about? And then TJ immediately picked up on it and seemed to like it. So apparently we're just running with that now, because it does operate in that zone, right, where it has a part of its deck that is extremely anti-aggro, with, you know, early Feral Spirits, early Serpent Shrine Portal to be able to swing back boards, and of course that ever-present Perpetual Flame. But then it is just such a good control buster as well if it gets the right hand and gets to go those doubled up charge calls, generate a Vivid Spores, have an insane Fireheart in the late game, doubled up Guidance just to have an internal resource battle with basically any deck in the game. It's so flexible and so adaptable in a metagame where really decks don't do that, as I've been talking about. There really are not a many decks that have as many strings to their bow as Nay does in the Hearthstone community, for example. So xBlyzes is kind of an outlier in the sense that it lies in the middle ground. Do you see where this is coming together?
I stopped listening 10 minutes ago.
Okay, fair enough.
You got me at the extreme middle ground.
Okay.
My brain's still working on that one, but let's focus in on this, of course. Still round 1 in Masters Tour. Silvermoon, CaelesLuna on the top there. He's going to be on the Shaman, and Nay on the bottom on the Shaman also. And it's going to be 2-1, so going to that game 4. Caeles just needs this one win to start off as well as you can start in the Swiss with a 1-0 victory.
Nay, apparently coming to us from the set of Tron, apparently. I don't know what's going on, but quite like it.
RGB to the max.
That's right, that is a gamer room.
Yeah, that is a setup. Yeah, though, not the best opening. You've always got to keep an eye on Bloom and what's available right in the early game. It's one of those options you spoke of it's not the control option, but a lot of the time the hyper aggro option of going crazy with like Bloom into XX to then unlock your crystals, but still gain the benefit of all that mana from Bloom.
Is CaelesLuna going to hit the nature? He certainly does. That's huge. Obviously, that's not a guarantee in the deck, but it's massive when it happens, particularly when you are running Earth Elemental as well, of course, because you then have that potential to pay off with a huge early board. Neither of these players are playing the Earth Elemental version. Both lists topping out at CaelesLuna.
Definitely not the minion you're after there for Nay. That's a little better for Caeles. Yeah. What do you make of Overdraft in Shaman? Because that's one of the biggest differences I see in the list is Overdraft or not Overdraft. Are you a fan of, which one are you a fan of?
I think one is okay in most lists. I think some lists are starting to go a little bit crazy with one-offs, but I think one Overdraft does make a little sense, you know, particularly because you're looking for a partner for that Instructor Fireheart, right? There's a quest in there as well. You are generally forced to play some one-offs in the version of the deck, and it like people remember the times where Overdraft is insane, right? When it deals 1 million damage to your opponent's face, snatches a lethal out of nowhere with double Lightning Bloom after Brukan, and then you get to Overdraft the opponent's face. But the times when it's bad, it's pretty bad. But then at the same time, I think that's the huge benefit of the new mechanic, of the tradable mechanic, is that we're seeing actually a lot more playable tech cards with like Rustrock Viper, for example, in the previous series, because you don't get punished so hard when you find the wrong matchup for those cards because of the tradable ability. So I think it's a card that, you know, exists on the fringes, and I'm happy with one copy of it in the deck in most situations.
Yeah, and although at least on board it looks like Nay is quite ahead, bear in mind that minion on the far left cannot attack, and also Caeles is winning on the resource wall, right? Like, look at everything he has access to right now, whereas Nay is in that spot you will find yourself in if you choose to play Shaman. Now and again, you'll be hoping for a draw off the top that opens up your hand and gains you some of that value.
It's the unlock here on the Lightning Bolt. That's one thing that the plant does defend on, is that Nay now kind of has this natural defense against Perpetual Flame on her board, which is kind of a big deal, I suppose.
Ooh. Can Nay ever be greedy with this? I don't think 2 mana is enough to warrant playing Fireheart, but it's hard to almost pass the turn, even if Nay wants to Perpetual Flame like Hero Power or something, or even Overdraft as well, just to unlock those double crystals. Like, this is a really tough call, I think, this turn. Yep, she's going to be a little bit greedy with the Fireheart, and honestly, I think I have to agree with this. I think she needs more out of it, especially staring down how many cards are in CaelesLuna's hand.
Yeah, exactly. She needs some kind of comeback mechanism here. Right now, this hand is just not really doing anything. You can imagine just, you know, a reasonable shape 3-drop off that initial Serpent Shrine portal, and she might have just been pushing a little bit of initiative here, right? Dealing some damage to the point you're just getting there, but it doesn't look like it in this spot, because, you know, I like to talk about 0/0s being randomly summoned. That is, that's truly a 0/0.
Weirdly enough, if Nay goes for it this turn, it's even less mana than the turn before to actually play around with. But again, it might just be forced. I don't know how many turns she can feel comfortable passing. There is Lightning Bolt to kill one of these minions, Overdraft to kill another, and then maybe go Fireheart next turn. I think that's probably going to have to be the plan. Just hope that that 4 mana is enough.
Yep. Once again, the illusion that she's ahead on board is just so misleading here, because she absolutely isn't.
Soaking up all that plus attack. It is very threatening right now.
Oh, this really could not have gone any worse for Nay in this position.
Wind Fury, that bad boy. For that one day when it can attack, it'll do the damage. Okay, Guidance, always a good pickup because it is always resources, because as Sol likes to say, you never look.
You never look. You never look, dude. Guidance is just play the card, don't look, click both. That's just how it works in this deck.
Now all the removal. Caeles's going to start off with Perpetual.
Oh, okay.
Does activate Brakan though, and I think he is more than okay with just slamming Brakan down this turn, passing, and enjoying the fact that, again, just a reminder, there is only really a 3-1 on the board there for Nay. Now there's none.
Yeah, if anything, like that Perpetual Flame not really doing that much more work was not even necessarily bad for CaelesLuna, right? Because it just means he's overloaded less for next turn when he gets to have his pop off. He still gets to take care of the board. So actually, there was no real bad outcome for CaelesLuna on that Perpetual Flame. Was really just playing it to get the Brukan in hand for 1 mana, and he is in overwhelming control of proceedings.
There are some really strong 3-drops though that can come out of Serpent Shrine. That's, again, not one of them.
Nope. Significantly better than the last one by a factor of infinity.
Again, is this going to have to be just hero power, wait, Fireheart next turn?
Oh.
I'm not sure whether that had to be the Fireheart turn, honestly.
Save it for next turn? Are you not just saving it for next game at that point? Like, how are you getting out of this position realistically? I just don't see it personally. But I don't see what playing it really does either in the same world, so...
That's it. If you could tell me a card to get this turn that would help, I'd be all for it. Yep. I think it might just be one of those games where you have to hope for a dream from Fireheart. At least to even just stabilize at this point.
Feral Spirit for 4 doggies. Charge Call for 2 Taunty Boys. Finds a 12-12. Okay, it's actually a tough decision now. You probably just take the other 12-12, right? No, okay. CaelesLuna does just take the other taunt.
I think with the Perpetual Flame being a factor, with Lightning Storm potentially being discovered, I think taking the secondary taunt's a big deal. CaelesLuna, if you ever want to join the European Grandmasters, you are more than welcome. I feel like we're missing out, Sol. APAC has a baguette.
Is that just beans out of a can? Like, what's going on over there?
Has an apocalypse happened in America? Well, Canada, and we don't know about it? Because maybe.
I mean, they look delicious. It's just a can of black beans or something, it looks like. I mean, I'd go for that. Sign me up.
Meanwhile, though, Nay has gone for Fireheart and is digging. Tidal Surge. Perpetual Flame. Oh, 1 mana off Lightning Storm.
CaelesLuna looks very concerned as to what's going to happen to his board this turn. I think he might be feigning that concern. I'm not sure this is genuine.
No, and it's just not going to be good enough. I think, honestly, even if it hit all of the Feral Spirits, it still would not have been good enough.
You fight. I am
And that's going to be the game. Something interesting. Let me just eat my can of beans right now.
Yeah, apparently they're pretty good. I'm pretty sure that thumbs up was a review of the beans and nothing to do with that series of Hearthstone.
And also, fantastic timing for the full screen shot. We've talked about this for some players in Europe for missing the full screen shot timing, but CaelesLuna has it locked down and has this matchup locked down as well. Strong victory. We only got to see, of course, the one game there, but again, it's about as good as you want that mirror to go right. You want to be the one with the resources and not falling behind on board, but I will say, a little bit unlucky there for Nay, just getting the outcome she got from those, from the Serpentine portals especially.
Yeah, I mean, the first one was just brutal and set the tone for the matchup. I mean, you can see even at this point, like the game is lost. Make no mistake about it, but still tried to troll Nay one more time by the Perpetual Flame not hitting one of, what, 5 good targets